Cor-Bon Pow'R ammunition, also listed as Glaser Pow'R. I'm not exactly sure how that works with the companies. I believe that there was a Glaser company and Cor-Bon bought them out. But back in the day, they used to create the safety slugs, which is basically like a copper jacket full of birdshot, and just a lot of various rounds like that. And Pow'R was one of those. So some of this ammunition was sent over to the channel by one of my Patreon supporters, Calamity Jane. She sent me over a couple boxes of this Pow'R and 357 Magnum. So I decided to pick up a couple boxes of the 9mm to run through a longer barrel test and then a shorter barrel test. So today I'm going to do the longer barrel test. I'm going to use my 4-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 686 to test the 357 Magnum and my 5-inch barrel M&P 9 2.0 to test the 9mm. So very interesting. These are both 100 grain. The 357 Magnum is rated at 1450 feet per second, but the 9mm is a plus P and is actually rated at 1475 feet per second. So its rating is actually higher than the 357 Magnum. I'm not sure what barrel lengths they use to get those ratings, but my thought is I'm probably going to get even more velocity out of this 5-inch M&P than what its rated velocity is. I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of the 357 Magnum. So the Pow'R is basically a polymer ball inside of a jacketed hollow point bullet that's supposed to aid in feeding but also cause quite the good effect, kind of the way critical defense does. When it hits the target, you don't get clogged hollow points and stuff like that. So I'm really interested to see what we're going to get with this. And if you wonder if this test is fair, a 4-inch revolver versus a 5-inch semi-auto have basically the same amount of barrel travel, because you know the 4 inches is not counting the chamber with the revolver, but when you say 5 inches in a semi-auto, that's actually counting the chamber. So they both have roughly 4 inches of travel in there. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. So I'm going to do my plain clear ballistic test first, just plain clear ballistics. I'm going to go into plain clear ballistics gel, see what the best potential is. No denim in the way to clog a hollow point or anything like that. No rib simulation to slow down its potential for penetration. Just see what we get for our best possible potential. Then I'm going to do a real world simulation where I'm going to have 4 layers of denim on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we'll have a 1/4-inch medium density fiber board that's going to represent ribs or sternum. 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4-inch medium density fiber board at the back to represent hitting back ribs. So clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh. So when you're seeing 3 inches and 16 inches, that translates more to like 1.5 inches pectoral muscle and 8 inches of flesh. So when I'm doing my real world simulation, it's more like I'm representing a 9.5-inch thick target with ribs in there. So we'll do a plain clear ballistic shot and then a real world simulation shot. And then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, I'm going to start with our 357 Magnum over the chronograph. So these are rated at 1450 feet per second. So I'm about 5 yards from that target. Let's see how close I get to 1450 feet per second and my 4-inch barrel here. $13.38, $13.76, $13.20, $14.30, $14.02. Let me run one more. $14.16. So not particularly consistent velocity and a lot below its rated velocity. So I'm not sure what barrel length they're using to get that. So 9mm+P. We were rated at 1475 feet per second. Let's see what I get in my 5-inch barrel here. $13.87, $13.99, $14.10, $14.56, $14.54. So yeah, below rated velocity, and it was consistent, and then it started to be not consistent with getting a lot higher reads. So I would say that they were optimistic with those rated velocities they have there. So let's start a ballistics gel block and see how these compare. All right, first up, we'll do our plain clear ballistics shot. No denim in the way to potentially clog a hollow point. No rib simulation in the way to potentially slow down its penetration. So let's see what we get here with our 357 Magnum. All right, set that with our 9mm. Let's go take a look. All right, so the first thing I noticed here was this first 3-inch piece. Our 9mm has a bigger star pattern going in it than our 357 Magnum, so that little extra velocity makes a little bit of difference there. And our first 3-inch piece, our 357 Magnum, are 9mm. So our 9mm definitely has a little bit more energy dump going on there. And what I mean by energy dump is, you know, just expanding out right away, fragmenting right away, you know, dumping a lot of its energy right away before it would potentially hit ribs. So both of them had a lot of energy dump because of those low bullet weights. And definitely more damage going on with our 9mm for sure. What we got with our 357 Magnum, I can't tell if this is expanded at all. I can't see it from this angle. But we hit 14 inches of penetration. Camera parallax will make it look like it's a little deeper than that, but we're right at 14 inches from a straight on view. Our 9mm, we went to 12.5 inches, so a little bit less penetration on that one. I can definitely see some petals busted off and some pretty big expansions. So let's do our real world simulation. We'll put on our denim on the front here, put on our rib simulations, and see how these compare in our real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation, 4 layers of denim followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiber board that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4 inch medium density fiber board at the back of that block to represent hitting back ribs. So let's see what we get with our 357 Magnum. And that shifted that whole setup around quite a bit, so that hit pretty hard. So let's see how our 9mm does in our real world simulation. Let's go take a look. All right, so that 9mm moved this entire block over quite a bit, which I never really see with most cartridges. So just hitting with a lot of force, a lot of, you know, energy dump. And I know that's not a real word out there necessarily, but it's something that I do coin when I see a lot of expansion or fragmentation before it hits the rib simulation. So it's dumping the energy very quickly and expanding very quickly. And we can see that in our first 3 inches. Both of them did pretty well. A little bit more tearing with our 9mm. And we look at our rib simulation, our 357 Magnum and our 9mm. From this view, it looks like the 357 Magnum had a bigger hole than the 9mm. But they are very, very similar overall. So they are opening up. Both of them are opening up quite quickly. So what we see going on here with our 357 Magnum, pretty good amount of damage going on, and we are just barely at 12 inches. The expansion is pretty good mushrooming going on there. Our 9mm though, a lot more damage going on in there, and the petals look a little bit more jagged and wicked, and just a more aggressive expansion going on there. And again, this one also is right at 12 inches with our 9mm. So looking at this, I'm going to say I think our 9mm did a little bit better. You know, the 357, it did fine, but the weird thing about this is that the recoil wasn't that much lower than a lot of 357 rounds, despite having substantially less energy. So, I mean, that's just what I'm seeing with this, what I feel. So I'm not going to truly know how that feels overall until I shoot at the target really quick. Then I'll make a better assessment on that. But looking at this, just the way we have all that damage in there, and, you know, and the velocity we're seeing with these particular loads, our 9mm is doing a little bit better. That being said, both of them are well below rated velocity, and I don't really give a whole lot of respect to ammo that does that, because I'm using barrel lengths that are longer than realistic, especially with the 9mm. If we're not even hitting rated velocity, you know, that says something about what, you know, why are they putting those numbers out there? It's kind of false marketing. So that's my opinion there. So let's pull these out of block. I'll take a close-up look at them. Then I'll shoot our steel, see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel, our 357 Magnum and our 9mm. So we can definitely see we had some jacket separation with our 9mm. So a 357 Magnum had really fantastic expansion. Just looks really good overall. Now our 9mm, it expanded quite well, but then it did have some jacket separation. So not terrible performance, but I would rather see that jacket remain on that core, because it'll do more damage pulling through with a copper jacket. Now going to our real world simulation, our 9mm, and that did not get jacket separation on that, but our 357 Magnum going through our real world simulation did have jacket separation, so it kind of reversed there. So here's our 9mm going through our real world simulation. Now it's not far from having well, kind of, yeah, see, almost, it kind of did have jacket separation, it just didn't fall off. And then we look at our 357 Magnum. Interesting there, that cup is like almost too big for that, that core. Our 357 Magnum had some jacket separation there. So, you know, not bad performance in the sense that they did expand pretty big, and they did hit a minimum penetration. But nowadays, you know, it's pretty standard to have bonded core, banded core, so that, you know, this jacket will pull through along with the lead core and do more cutting, because copper is very hard and sharp. That just hurt now. As we're, you know, lead is pretty soft, so you almost always do a little bit better in performance when you don't get jacket separation. But overall, it's good enough expansion and good enough penetration. I'll give it a pass on that and say, you know, it did well enough. I just would rather not see jacket separation. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target, so I'm just going to get a front sight picture, and after that I'm going to pop these off as fast as I think I can hit the target, and that'll kind of tell me, you know, what the felt recoil is, how they feel for me realistically, for my ability to get them back down on target, and just kind of see how they do for me. So 357 Magnum, 14 yards. Let's see what this does for me. All right, so like I was saying before, I thought the recoil wasn't that much lower. I'm gonna say it's a little bit lower than typical 357 Magnum. Very easy to control, to be honest, when I'm firing that quickly. And it seems like they grip tight enough, like they're coming back down on target very easily for me. So let's see how I get with our 9mm. Okay, I've had this M&P 9 2.0 for over 4 years. I have not had even one malfunction in it ever until today. Something's wrong. I'm thinking underpowered round potentially. No, yeah, I don't know. It didn't feed because it's not been struck. It just never fed. So there wasn't enough juice on that last round to kick that round back out. Huh. Keep going. So it shoots pretty predictably, and I like that. But this ammo has, you know, the title of the round that broke my streak of never having malfunctions. Up until this point, the only other time I ever pulled the trigger on this pistol and nothing happened was with some Federal 9mm PLE. I pulled the trigger and nothing. It was a dead primer, completely a dead primer, which is not really a malfunction of the pistol at all. So this is the first malfunction I've ever had in this pistol after 4 years, and I shoot it a lot, so disappointed there. Let's back it up and see how these will shoot from some more distance. All right, 75 yards from the target just for fun at this point. So I'm just gonna fire slow and see how these things will shoot. Because they are 100 grains, they might have a really significant drift and the point of impact for me. I noticed that they were shooting kind of weird up close, like the 357s were shooting very low from my point of aim, and the 9mm were shooting very high, even at 5 yards. So let's see how they do at 75. Just gonna aim center mass and see how these do. So these are definitely hitting a little bit low, you know, because I missed one and I decided to aim at the head or high shoulders, neck area on that silhouette, and then I was able to make more hits. So now these 9mm were hitting high at 5 yards, so I don't know where they're going to hit at 75. I'll same center mass again though, and see where these go. A little bit high. All right, so the last of those hits I aimed like at the very base of that silhouette, so not bad for accuracy overall. They're just, you know, the points of impacts are shifted. So looking at this test, the only thing I can think about right now is that malfunction, because, you know, I did some quick math in my head. I would say in the past 4 years, I shoot on average probably 20 rounds of jacket hollow point through this pistol every week, nonstop. So that would equate to at least 4,000 rounds of jacket hollow point ammunition. And I have never once had a failure to feed with any of those rounds. And what's ironic about it is this ammunition, it says in the literature, it's designed to have better feeding. And that's the very round that gave me my first malfunction in 4 years in this pistol. So that really stands out here. Another thing that stands out is with both the 357 and the 9mm, I was seeing a significant sparks. Like I'd see just streaks shooting out, sparks, which I don't normally see that. You know, it wasn't necessarily flash, it was just like big pieces of sparks that were coming out. Don't know what would cause that specifically, but I saw it with most of the shots with both of these guns, both these calibers. Now looking at the velocity here, both of them are well below the rate of velocity. Now with our 357 Magnum, I kind of give it a pass on that. It's a 4-inch barrel revolver. It is semi-common to use a 6-inch for rating. Not always, but semi-common. So the fact that, you know, I got a little bit below rate of velocity, actually quite a bit, you know, maybe 60, 70 feet per second below. Yeah, I'm really used to that out of this 4-inch barrel. I see that quite a bit because ammo companies like to inflate revolver numbers, you know, and for all other reasons I listed there. Now with the 9mm, there's no excuse for this because the industry standard for 9mm for a long time has been 4-inch barrel, 4-inch semi-auto. So if something says 1475, you're expecting to see that out of a 4-inch barrel revolver, or a 4-inch barrel semi-auto, I should say. So when you go to a 5-inch semi-auto, you should see at least 50 feet per second more. So I'm thinking 50 to 75. I'm thinking I might be seeing 50 feet per second. Not most of them in the 1300s. So this is way, way below the rated velocity. And I did see a lot of unburnt powder flakes. So overall, I'm going to say this ammo is kind of junk in my opinion. But we'll see how it does with a short barrel test, because I am going to run it through the short barrel. You know, it might be enough difference to make a difference where the recoil is really, really low, and it should be because they're 100 grain bullets. So there's not a lot of muzzle jump with those. And they might still perform, and that might be enough difference to make the difference. But when we're talking these full-size guns, you could do so much better than this. So much better. But that's just my opinion on this ammo from my testing. And thank you again to Calamity Jane for sending over this 357 Magnum ammo, a couple boxes of it, because I have actually been wanting to test Cor-Bon Pow'Rball, as well as some of the older Glaser safety slug stuff. I just haven't tested any of them until now. And, you know, I'm not hopeful from seeing this, but at least I got to do it. So thanks again. And as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.